Hello, and I'm a bit late tonight. I'm late because I have 100 children and we had to have dinner and my chair is too high. That's heaps better. Okay, so good evening, even though I'm starting a little bit late. And tonight I'm Debbie Carberry from debbiecarberry.com.au. Tonight I'm going to be talking about communication, specifically about parts of communication that really can bring us a bit undone in our relationships. So the parts of our relationship that can actually erode because of the way we communicate. And I'm going to talk about, hello, nice to see you, Angie. So tonight I want to talk about 4 things that we know scientifically, research-based things that really impact the way we communicate. Hello, Angie. And the 4 things were from a researcher called John Gottman. John Gottman is a really interesting bloke. So what he did in America was he set up this love lab, which I always thought was quite amusing. But he set up this laboratory where he brought in couples to try and work out predictors around what would make their relationships end. And he basically set them up to fight, which is interesting. And what he did was he took them through a bunch of things to see how they responded and reacted to it. So tonight we're going to talk about those 4 things, that research data stuff that set these 4 things really do indicate whether a relationship will end or not within 95% accuracy. This guy really knew what he was talking about. So basically, we talk a lot in relationships about communication, and I guess, we all want to communicate well. We all have good intention to communicate well. But unfortunately for a lot of us, communicating can be this minefield because of a couple of things. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the first horse he talks about of the apocalypse, which is defensiveness. And defensiveness is around feeling a bit like a victim in the situation. Oftentimes we're trying to protect ourselves because we perceive an attack from our partner. So we say things like, it's not my fault, I didn't start this. We might do things like cross complaints. So when one person says something, we come across with, well, actually, you did this. When they say they did something, we tell them, well, you did it too, Hello, Melanie. So basically, with defensiveness, it's a bit like this, right? I'm ready for the punch. I'm going to be really mindful, and you're not going to get at me before I get at you. If we disagree with what somebody's complaining about, we might come in with our own set of complaints. We disagree with their stuff, and we defend our actions, what we think, what we feel, what we believe. Or we do the fabulous yes butting. I absolutely hate yes butting. Clients, I'll be talking in the clinic with clients, and I'll be putting forward some possibilities or choices, and clients will come back with, I think that's a fabulous idea, but, and what I've learned over the years is when somebody says but, it means forget everything I've said because that's not what I'm going to do. I'm just not going to do that. So for me, the yes buts are a bit tricky. The other thing is, and I'm sure we've all experienced this, is that lovely circular running around and around and around and around on a topic. It's punch for punch. I say something, then you defend, then I defend, then you defend, then I defend. Defensiveness really isn't helpful because it keeps you off topic. It stops you from getting to the root of what's going on. It stops you from trying to actually solve a problem. While you're defending and reacting, you can't actually do anything about what's coming up for you. So defensiveness is not brilliant. But there are much worse things that you can do than be defensive. Now, if you have any questions about anything I'm saying, please just pop them in the chat and hopefully I will see them. And I'll answer any questions you've got about anything I'm saying, and I'll do a bit at the end too. So the next thing that comes up in relationships is criticism. Don't we love a bit of criticism? And men, I think, are really fine-tuned to criticism. They really... Men just have this, and I think it's a cultural thing where there's this feeling of being picked upon and criticized, and it's really hard for guys because once they feel that come in, like they feel like they're being criticized, up comes the wall, and they don't want to have to keep going, and they don't want to talk anymore, and it's too much, and so they disengage. Criticism looks like you know, we can complain about something, but that's not criticism. Complaints might be, you know, it really drives me nuts that you leave the toilet seat up. That's a complaint, right? But you're an absolute pig for leaving up the toilet seat is definitely criticism. Thank you, Angie. I'm glad you agree with everything I'm saying. So when we come into criticism, it's about not the person, it's not the behavior, rather. We're not upset about the behavior that's going on. We're really cranky about the person, and we attack the person and their personality and who they are. So criticism brings with it a lot of really nasty kind of stuff. Like we use phrases like "you always" or "you never," and of course these kind of statements for a lot of people, you know, who wants to have a conversation with somebody and try and resolve something when we feel like we're being attacked? So criticism just really can be quite challenging and mean that we just feel like we're not going to be able to resolve stuff because we need to be protective because the other party is criticizing us. So criticism, yeah, not a good one. Number 3 is stonewalling. And stonewalling is something that I find actually personally quite irritating and distressing. And it literally is what it sounds like. It's for the person on the receiving end of stonewalling, we feel shut out, and the other person is just blocking us and they don't want to talk to us. They may actually remove themselves from the situation, and the person on the receiving end of that can feel really ignored and not validated. For the person who's doing the stonewalling, oftentimes it is about psychological shutdown. It's about a feeling of overwhelm, like this is so intense and so much that I just literally cannot be here. I feel so, like it's not going to end and it's really engulfing me, and so I've got to do whatever I can to get away. And in that situation, people will stonewall. They will literally either physically leave the situation and walk away and slam a door or make an exit of some sort, or they might be very silent, not continue a conversation and shut down internally. And for the person on the receiving end of that, it can be really challenging. A couple of other tricks in the stonewalling repertoire are things like, you know, completely changing a subject. So when you're in a really hot topic and it's really challenging, the other person might just go, okay, I'm going to change the subject to something else. They might do complete silent treatment, which, you know, it can be quite a psychologically painful experience to be talking to somebody, wanting to reach them, wanting to talk to them, and have them just really block you psychologically can feel quite painful. And like I said, remove themselves physically, which is challenging sometimes when people actually just leave the scene and decide they're not going to participate. So that can feel really, really hard. The final one, number 4, is really the one that I say to my clients, and what Gottman describes as sulfuric acid to relationships. It wounds deeply and burns deeply psychologically, and that is contempt. And he found that if you use contempt when you are communicating with your partner, the likelihood of divorce was extremely high, or your relationship ending was extremely high, like in the 90s, high 90s. And I guess contempt looks like eye rolling and tutting and sarcasm and mocking and sneering and fairly hostile humor. So contempt is really a painful, painful experience for the person on the receiving end. You know, it can be things like name calling and put downs and insults and being poked in that really sore point in yourself. You know, when you have something and you've shared it with your partner, for example, and it's a really important, very precious thing that you've shared, and it has to be treated like that, and your partner in a moment of anger is using contempt on that topic to really, really deeply wound you. So contempt is a massive predictor of separation, massive. Angie, stonewalling, yeah, and I think for most of us, Angie, when we feel like we are being wounded, our brain runs into fight, flight, and freeze. There is an absolute physiological response that says, I'm in danger right now, I may be hurt right now, and so we want to move into this space of protectiveness, and we use these things to protect ourselves. We just do. So I guess it's about understanding that that's what it is, understanding that when you use any of these strategies, they are strategies of self-protectiveness, but what they do is actually push you and your partner about as far away from each other as you can get. And it means that the two of you are going to struggle to actually communicate your way out of the situation. So yes, some of these things are really, really challenging, because when we feel like we are at risk or we're going to be hurt, we really want to look after ourselves. So it can be really, really hard. If you guys have any questions, pop them into the chat below. And if not, I'm going to just talk you through some things that you can actually do to manage some of these really tricky styles of communicating. So when we're communicating, one of the most important things is to actually listen. It seems like a really silly thing to say, because of course when you're communicating you are listening, but oftentimes we are listening, and even as soon as the other person starts to talk, we are organizing our response to their behavior before they've even finished. We want to respond, we want to react, we want to get our point across, we want to defend, and we're already in a space of going, I'm going into this wanting to respond to this person, not to hear them. And hearing is really about really hearing without judgment, listening. So if your partner says, I am so fed up, it's not fair, why do I have to do all of the work? When we go into defensiveness, like, well, you don't do half the work, I do at least half of the work. When we go into listening, we say, you know what, I can hear that you really feel like you're doing this by yourself. I can hear that you really feel like this is really hard for you. We're not saying that they're right or wrong. We're just saying, I heard what you said to me. And I'm listening to what you said. Hi, Charmaine, how are you going? I listened to and heard what you said. And if we can do that for a partner, guess what happens? They deactivate. So because we're hearing them, they stop getting upset, or at least they come down from the level upset they've got. And we can help to manage to soothe them by just being there and hearing what they say. So listening is a really important communication skill, and it is a skill like any other skill. If you're learning to play tennis for the first time, you're probably going to mess up a bit. Communication is no different. If you have learnt from your family of origin to communicate in a way that says defend, 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 or stonewall, or criticize, or use contempt, if you learnt that in your history, that's what you're going to go and grab a hold of when you start to communicate. So you have to get on your frontal lobe this thought pattern of, hang on a second, I don't want to fight you, I want to understand you. I don't want to fight you, I want to actually resolve this. And the only way to do that is to listen really carefully. That's the first part of this, it's really, really important. The other thing is listening with your heart. When we are in pain, you think of your children. When you are in a lot of pain, what you need from the other party is their understanding. Not necessarily agreeing, but for them to understand that this is hard for you. With our kids, we get down to their level and we talk to them. We say, okay, tell me so I can understand. But we don't do that with our partners. We don't get down to that and say, I want to understand you. I really want to get it. I want to hear you, and I want us to work it out. So help me to understand you. So listening with your heart is really important. Get past the rubbish that gets in the way, the need to be right, and move to the space of going, I just want to resolve it with you. I want us to work it out. So very, very important. Which leads me into the next thing is, let go of the need to be right. And I often say to couples when they come to therapy with me that I'm not on either one of your team. I'm on the relationships team. So both of you bring something to this relationship. There are two parts to this relationship, but there's a third part, and that is the relationship. And the relationship is more important than either one of the parts. When we sit and try and communicate with our partner and we look at, how do I reach you? How do we understand each other? How are we going to work this out? we have to let go of being right, because guess what happens when somebody is right? One of you's wrong. Who wants to be wrong? I don't have arguments with my partner going, oh, I hope I'm the wrong one tonight. I don't want to be the wrong one, you know. But if we go into communication with this belief system of somebody's got to be right, then one other person in this situation is going to be wrong. And you can bet if you are communicating, and if you communicate with most people, they're going to defend the heck out of that, because they're like, I'm not going to be wrong. I'm just not going to be the wrong one. So letting go of the need to be right and looking at the relationship as being more important than either one of the two parties. Like, let's fix the relationship rather than be the person who's right or wrong. The other thing is focusing on a solution and a resolution rather than, you know, when you circle the wagons, you know, and you've done it right. I'm absolutely sure many of you who are watching right now, and there's a few of you, say hello. But you know when you've done that circling of the wagons where you're going around and around and around and around, and each time the other party is trying to put forward their case, their argument, to demonstrate, well, actually, this is why I'm right, and the other party comes back with a defense, and this is why I'm right. You know, we need to let go of the fighting, the content, and actually come to a resolution. And therapeutically, I'm all about not getting too stuck in the content, because what happens a lot of times is people talk about, and he said this and she said that, and you know, and then my Auntie Flo said this, and you get all this content. It's like we're going nowhere with this content. The content is so keeping us stuck in not finding a solution. So when we get rid of that and go, hang on a second, what is this actually about? What's it about? And usually it's not what you're fighting about. It has nothing to do with what you are arguing about. Usually beneath the surface there is a need that is not being met, and that is what the fight is about. It might be, for example, you know, why do I always have to do all of the chores and you don't do any of the chores? That's about, I feel overwhelmed, I feel unsupported, I desperately need your support and help because it's too much for me. And I'm fighting with you to say, help me. I need you to help me. I'm struggling. You know, when we fight about things like one person making all the decisions, and it's about, you know, hang on a second, where's my voice in this? You know, why do we have to go to your parents' house again? Can't we do something else? And it's about, well, what about me in this? Where do I fit in this? Why don't I matter in this situation? So we get stuck in the content, and that's really distracting. It stops us from really looking at what's actually going on. And if you work through it and stop arguing for a minute and sit down and go, what am I fighting about? What am I actually trying to communicate here to my partner? You know, you might come up with, well, you know, he's been home late every night this week, and I've had to do all the stuff. I collect the kids, I cook the food, I go to the supermarket, and I do everything, and he does nothing. What's that actually about? What is it about? Maybe you're lonely. Maybe you want him to come home and help you. Maybe you want him to do a couple of days so you can take a break. Maybe you want to be appreciated. And when you work out what it is that's underneath it, you have some chance of resolving it. So hang on a second, I've got some things here. Angie, how would you word the things to come to a peaceful solution? It's a good question, Angie. And I guess it's about using I statements, and you know, people think that's really cliche, but it's not. When I'm talking about myself, I feel like that is really helpful. And then tell the other person what you want. And it might be, I feel really tired and I want you to help me. And your partner might go, no, I'm not helping you. Or they may make an excuse. You're then left with, I still need help. What am I going to do about it? Because you've asked your partner and they've given you a response. Not one that you want, that didn't make you feel good, but they did give you a response. And now you have to work out, okay, well, I still have a need because I'm still tired and I'm still overwhelmed and I still need help. So then we have to work out, what am I going to do? What am I going to do to actually, excuse me, deal with this? So a peaceful solution is not always an agreement. A peaceful solution may be agreeing that you can't resolve it and going, this isn't going to be resolvable. I'm going to separate and have a think about what are my choices now? What can I do now given the outcome of that conversation? Shaman, categorically our arguments have never been about the subject matter but about the push and pull anxious avoidant dance. Absolutely. And I think the push me pull me dance is really characteristic of a lot of people, where there's the need for connection and we make the bids for connection, like please hear me, please see me, please help me. And if our partner doesn't hear us, doesn't see us, or can't help us, that is a deep wound. That's a historical wound. That's an attachment wound, and we crave it. We're like, please see me. And again, like our little toddler friends, if we don't see our partners, then guess what? They have a bloody tantrum because they're angry. So it's about, understanding that when we don't get our needs met, what happens for us is that we then up the ante and it becomes massive. About feeling like you're working solo. Absolutely, Angie. And I think, for single parents, it's really challenging. You don't have a sidekick that you can go, hey, help me out here. And so oftentimes, women who are doing it by themselves, and men, I know men who do single parenting, do struggle, and it is hard. And we do want the assistance, and hopefully there's family or friends who can come in and give a hand. But when you're in a couple, it's what I've been told by people oftentimes is that it feels worse, because if I was alone, I'd be okay with this. But because I have my partner standing there so close to me who could soothe me, who could help me, then it's kind of a double whammy. Like the ache is there, the loneliness is there, the longing is there, when your bids for connection are not met, it's felt in here. We feel it in here. It really is like a thud to the chest, and it's really, really painful. So yeah, absolutely, feeling really like you're working on your own. And Charmaine, you're going, you said avoidance seem to want a peaceful solution that isn't helpful for me, isn't anxious. I need to get my needs met. And I'm not massively a big fan of the, let's label it all up as avoidant and anxious, but I know what you're saying is we come with our attachment styles from polar opposites sometimes. One person may have a massive need for a lack of conflict, but their need for a lack of conflict, oftentimes they select a partner who wants engagement, and they don't want engagement. So guess what that's going to create? A bucket full of conflict, because both people need to have their needs met. And if one is, hey, it helps me when I can shut down and be quiet, and the others is, every time you do that, it activates me so badly, I can't cope, then that's going to create massive amounts of conflict. So it's about the couple learning their dance moves, and being able to come from that heart space of saying, when my partner shuts down from me, I feel really deeply hurt, and being able to express it and say, I understand you need this. I understand you need to shut down right now because it feels too much for you. When can you come back to this? And a partner saying, I can come back to this in 20 minutes. I just need to have a break. I just need to have a bit of downtime. I just can't do it right now, and I need to have just a bit of time out to be able to come back and talk to you again. And I think that's what's really important about understanding your style of connection, that neither one is wrong. Everybody's doing their best, but when certain attachment styles meet, it can be electrifying and not in a good way. So yes, all right. So, scrolling, Angie, you've said you're a single parent even when it was a marriage relationship, and that's why I had the Stonewall. Yes, and I think when we have learned over and over again from relationships that when we don't get our needs met, then we go, I know what works here, I'm just going to shut down. It's self-protective, like a hedgehog, they just sort of curl up into a ball. Not hedgehogs in Australia, what are they called? Echidnas. And they roll up into a ball and all their spikes come out and like, no, you can't hurt me. No, you can't hurt me. So we get self-protective. Charmaine, you're saying respects totally to single parents, but as you said, Debbie, it's so lonely in the couple. You're not supporting, you're moving all the stuff around too, seething with resentment. you know what? That's exactly right, Charmaine. Resentment comes right up to the surface, and although the four horsemen, which is, you know, your defensiveness, contempt, criticism, and stonewalling come, resentment comes charging along. And when there's that resentment bubbling away under the surface, then you can bet contempt is not too far away. So we get fed up and angry and frustrated, and we say and do things that we're not necessarily proud of, and that are wounding, because we're like, you know, I'm hurting too. And I often say to people, I hate you equals you hurt me. And I think there are lots and lots and lots of times when we react in quite an angry, hurtful way because we feel hurt. It's like, you've hurt me, and God damn it, I'm going to hurt you right back. So yeah, it can lead to a lot of issues. Yeah, and getting your needs met, Charmaine, is massive. Whether you're single or partnered, like being able to list what your needs are and finding a way of getting them met. You know, in our society where it's mental sometimes, it's so busy and full on, and you know, we forget what the basic needs are, and that's where we need to start. You know, we need to be rested, we need to eat well, we need shelter, we need support. We are absolutely, we need to be in a clan. That's what we're designed to do. We're part of a tribe. We don't do human beingness in isolation, we do it collectively. It's really important for us. We are hardwired to connect, and when we don't get that, it is wounding on a very, very, very deep level. Yes, ladies. Yes, you're an echidna, Angie. I know, it's all right. I think having an awareness that that's what you are is important. Do you know what I mean? I think we all do our best. Nobody goes and says, oh, I'm going to do a crappy job. We all do our best, but sometimes, yeah, our best is rolling up into a ball and being a bit spiky. Yeah, hurt and angry. Yeah, gloves off. I agree with you, Charmaine. All right, ladies, I'm rolling a little bit long, but if you've got any questions you want to ask me, you can pop your questions in. I'm going to have a bit of tea because I need a bit of tea. So if you've got any questions you want to ask me, go ahead and ask, and I'll quickly answer them before I do my sort of finish up for today. I was a bit late today because I had stuff going on with my own kids and having to try to get dinner on the table in time. Charmaine's an echidna too. Looks like we're all a bit prickly on here tonight. That's all right. Okay, so I'm going to close up, and I guess when it comes to communication, some of the important things to remember are, when you're communicating, take responsibility for your part of it. I statements, I feel, when you, and what you would like from the person. Let's tell them what we want, because that gives them a chance of actually meeting our needs. Remembering to listen from your heart. You know, if we can come in from this softer space and go, you know, I want to be kind to this other person, they are struggling too. Letting go of the need to be right is really important, because when there's somebody who's a winner, there's somebody who's a loser. Put the relationship above of your individual needs, because the relationship is the third party in that relationship, and focus on getting a solution rather than having a good old scrap. So get off of the content and get on what you want and need and how you're going to move forward. Oh, that's really good, Charmaine. So, ladies, I'm finishing up for now. If you want to know more about working with me, you can. I'll put a link underneath here. I've got some blogs about the Four Horsemen that you can read. You can watch my YouTube videos. I've got a ton of stuff on Facebook, and I will put the link for working with me underneath. I work with people either in my online program, which is the 6-week online program, or you can work with me individually, where I do a relationship intensive with you. So you're more than welcome to have a look at that. And if you've got any questions, I will answer every question that goes down there. I'll answer everyone. So if you've got any questions about anything you see on the video, just let me know. And on that note, all of you, I am going to go, because I still have more work to do, because I'm a mum and all my kids are quietly off in some corner of the house doing something while I do this, and then everybody will make a racket again in a minute. So thank you very much, everybody, and I will see you next week. And I'm not sure what next week's topic is, actually. Let me have a quick squiz. Next week's topic is, as I scroll down, is who's number one? Who's number one in your life? So join me again next week. I'll probably move it to 8 o'clock, because that's a bit bit easier for me. Thank you to Angie. Thank you, Charmaine. You have a really lovely evening and or morning, depending on which part of the universe you're in. I know Charmaine's over in the UK. So take it easy, guys, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.